her area of expertise, and then we are coming up with various seminars or webinars to be organized for people, for all the students, parents, and our field people, so that we can all join in and understand quite well about disorders. As Daud mentioned, we are all into this all webinars and doing our lectures together. So I welcome you all. Akar is been we've been starting work wise, like say last time we had one full intensive language course with all the speech therapists as participants. Later we had work with we now starting with a complete package on ADHD, wherein the inauguration is done by Dr. Reema. We'll be having further more lectures on, solving the mysteries of the ADHD, and we'll have a complete understanding towards how the disorder works, how does the brain work, and what kind of therapeutic intervention we can expect. Dr. Reema today is going to talk a lot on the diagnosis part. Now, a lot is being written about diagnosis in for a little older group, like after 5 most of the diagnosis is being done. So it's pretty easy. It is pretty very obvious. Okay, there's DSM-5 criteria. There is Indian scale. There are various measures which we can do it. But however, it's very difficult to identify the disorder in young children. Very, like say you want to identify the disorder at the age of 3. You want to identify the disorder at the age of 4. It's very, very, very difficult. Hence, we both of us came in that we would like to know more about the diagnostic criteria in young children, in at the age of 3, at the age of 4, how difficult it is to diagnose. And Reema being attached to Prafulta, which is also attached to various schools, and it works in the scholastic area, it becomes very easy for us to give an insight on this disorder. Reema, she's done her bachelor's from Sion Hospital and her master's from All India Institute. So over to you, Reema. We look forward to your understanding about the diagnosis part.
Thank you, Chanda. Thank you for giving me an opportunity for the awareness of ADHD. I will start sharing my screen, and then we start. One sec. So good evening, everyone, parents, teachers, professionals, and my dear friends. A very warm welcome to all of you. Today, we are going to speak about ADHD, that is Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder. I hope you all are doing good, and we all are going through a difficult time of this pandemic, and we are learning new things every day. So today we shall learn about ADHD.
Ma'am, could you just highlight the screen? Can you make it larger?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you.
So when parents come to me with their children for assessment or evaluation, and I kind of ask them, what is the problem in your child? Why have you come to me? Or if I ask them the chief complaints, and they are like, most of the times the answer what I get is nothing. He's little naughty, but otherwise everything is fine in my child. I'm here only because the school has referred me. And I was like, okay. And then they're like, he's very smart. He takes care of his things, and he is got very good grasping power. He is only naughty. Otherwise, everything else is good in my child. So most of the times I've seen that the parents are into denial, and I would not blame them for that. The denial is not because they are not aware of they are not aware of the fact. It's not because they do not want to accept the fact, but because they are not aware of the fact. So let's dig into this topic more to understand the difference between a naughty child and an ADHD child. Okay. I think we have a very mixed crowd here in this group, in this talk. So I would like to start with the basics of ADHD first. And I want you all to know certain facts of ADHD. Okay. So let's start with the definition first. Whenever you hear the term ADHD, you just have to imagine three words in your mind, that is inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. These are the three key symptoms of ADHD. But these symptoms have significance only and only if they interfere, which is a very extremely important point here. They interfere with the normal functioning or the development of the child. Suppose if a child comes to me who is really hyperactive and he cannot sit for a long time, but if he is able to finish his work on time, if he is able to do a particular activity, if he is able to have his normal age appropriate development as expected, I would not look for ADHD in him. So basically, the hindrance has to be there in his daily activities. The symptoms should interfere in his daily activities and his functioning. Normal age appropriate expected functioning should be hampered. Only then I would see it as ADHD. Now, I would like you all to, I would like to know whether you all feel whether ADHD is a brain disorder or no. Can we, Dawood, can we have the answers on the chat? Who all feel that it's a brain disorder and who all do not feel that?
Right. I'll read out the answers as they come by.
Yes. So I just want to understand, according to your understanding, is ADHD a brain disorder or no?
So I've got Snehal ma'am saying no, Priyanka ma'am saying no, Richa ma'am. There are a lot of people saying yes now.
Yes.
I can say there's 60% no's and 40% yes. It's a neurobiological order, as Seher says. Lekha says it's neurodevelopment disorder. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Rima, someone also has said it's a behavioral disorder, which we do. We need to confirm this theory about.
It's like you're asking, remember you're asking our students to read all the maths answers. So I'm just reading yes and no to you. I have no idea what the answer is.
Okay. No, I would say that it is definitely a brain disorder. Okay. Definitely the brain is involved in this disorder, and the brain throws signals to the body and the body keeps on responding to these signals. It's not just a behavior. It's not just that the child wants to irritate us and he's doing it on purpose. It's not in his hands. The brain is the culprit which is making the child become hyperactive or give signals or throw signals on his body. Okay, so it's definitely a brain disorder. We would go into the pathology of the brain in the later slides, but we remember that it's a brain disorder. ADHD is a lifelong condition. ADHD cannot be cured as such. The parents and the children, they learn to cope up with that. But if ADHD is detected early in life, we all know that our human brain is till 8 years of age is quite moldable, and we all have immature brain. The children are born with immature brain. So whenever you try any kind of therapy, any treatment, it works better when they are treated in their early childhood. So definitely, if the condition is treated or if it's diagnosed during the early years of life, the ADHD symptoms can fade away for sure. But this goes, I think, for any other disorder. Early intervention is always better and gives you a better prognosis. But this is the whole purpose of today's talk. If we can screen those kids or symptoms in those kids of ADHD at an early age, we can definitely help the child. According to American Psychiatric Association, 1 in 25 children are affected. And that's a huge number according to me. I mean, it's as good as one child per class. Imagine the increasing number of ADHD kids. The signs are really alarming. The numbers are really alarming. And we should really work on the childhood therapy and the diagnosis at a very early age. When I say ADHD, generally everyone feels that it is affected in your school life only and he cannot complete his homework. He does not sit at one place. That is ADHD. No, ADHD affects your personal life, your interpersonal relationships, your social interaction, your disorganized life, your daily routine. The whole routine of your life becomes upside down, and they have a lot of problem. As a whole, personality gets affected in all the areas of life. It's not only school life getting affected. Now, quickly we go into the types of ADHD. As you all know, ADD, that means attention deficit disorder, was previously used as a term, which now has become type 1 ADHD. For the professionals, especially who all know about ADD, now ADD is no more used as a terminology. Now ADD has become type 1 ADHD, where the hyperactivity symptoms are not there. So when a child comes to me, he may not show me the signs of hyperactivity. He may not run from one place to another. He may be sitting at a one place, but that does not mean that he does not have ADHD. He may be type 1, where he is highly inattentive, but he does not show the symptoms of hyperactivity. Generally, girls fall into this category of inattentive type, and they have other symptoms of ADHD, but not hyperactivity. We have type 2 ADHD, where you have hyperactivity symptoms are very obvious, and you can see the child actually not able to sit at one place, continuously getting up from the place, moving here and there, and the symptoms are very obvious. The boys are generally into this category. And we have the third type, which is the combined type, when you have all the symptoms are seen in this type, both inattention and hyperactivity, both. In my private practice, in my so many years of practice, I have treated more boys than girls, and have got more referrals also for boys. And the research also shows that boys are 2 to 4 times more affected than girls. That's just unknown. The reason is unknown, but generally this is how it goes. Now we go into the brain pathology. As I already told you all that ADHD is a brain disorder. Guys, please ignore the slides of the brain if it is going too heavy on you all, because I already mentioned that it's a mixed group today. So I am going to go into the details of brain also. So it's seen that the brain with ADHD is little smaller in size than the healthy brain. And there are all the areas of the brain are affected. We all know that we have 4 lobes: the occipital lobe, parietal lobe, frontal lobe, and the temporal lobe. But in that, the main lobe, overall the brain is reduced in size. So automatically all the areas are going to get affected. But the main area or the main lobe which is affected is prefrontal and frontal cortex. On the left side of the figure, you can see the prefrontal cortex of the brain. So this brain part is highly affected in ADHD. And if you see the symptoms or the functions of these this brain part are attention, behavior, judgments, and emotional responses. So you need to remember these functions only because these functions, we are going to see them as symptoms in the child. Okay, we go ahead with the brain slide. So now, as I already told you all, that frontal cortex is the main brain part which is affected. You have something known as neurotransmitters in the brain. So for those who do not know, neurotransmitters are chemical substances which are present in your brain, and they transmit messages within the brain. So dopamine and norepinephrine are the 2 neurotransmitters which are responsible for ADHD. And there are certain nuclei, group of nuclei which are present under the cortex, and these are called basal ganglia. And amygdala is the main basal ganglia which is affected in ADHD. So now I do not want you all to understand or remember, not even look at these names of the brain parts, but definitely look on this side where the functions of these brain parts are given. Because according to these functions, the symptoms are going to get reflected in the child. So if you go through these functions of these brain parts, you would find that the attention, behavior, decision making is a problem in them. They cannot plan a schedule. They cannot stick to a schedule. They're highly disorganized. Any ADHD child comes to us, the main complaint of the parent is the study shelf is always in a mess. The school bag is in a mess. The school bag mein erasers are lost every time. The pages of the books are folded. So highly disorganized. I mean, there is always a conflict between the mother and the child, and jhagda going on between the parent and the child only because the shelves and things are untidy, kept untidy. and they are called as the pasara masters of the house. They just cannot keep the toy cupboard organized. So basically these things are the functions of frontal cortex, and which is only affected in ADHD. The mood swings are very high in a child. I mean, suddenly they will throw a tantrum, suddenly they become sad. The arousal levels are very bad. Arousal levels is basically to do with your level of alertness, how alert I am. So arousal levels also takes care of your sleep wake cycle. So if you speak to a parent of a ADHD child, she will definitely tell you that he has lot of sleep issues. He doesn't go up to sleep fast. He doesn't wake up early after going to stay asleep. He has trouble staying asleep also. So a lot of sleep disturbances are found because this arousal center, the sleep wake cycle of the brain is affected. And the last one, amygdala, oh, that's called the emotional center of the brain. All the emotions of our brain are concentrated at that center, and that's why it's called the emotional center. But amygdala is also affected in ADHD. So imagine the amount of emotions affected in an ADHD child. So ADHD is not only about hyperactivity, but lot of emotions, lot of disorganization, lot of attention and behavior, and lot of sleep disturbances also. Now we would like to go in the causes. Let's see what are the causes of ADHD. We just discussed about the neurological causes of ADHD. We already saw that the brain size is, the volume of the whole brain is reduced as such. So all the areas are affected, mainly the frontal and the prefrontal. The neurotransmitters are also lacking in ADHD child. And the third is the amygdala and the basal ganglia, which are affected. The neurological causes, we have just gone through them. Now hereditary, yes, very important point. ADHD runs in the family. Okay, whenever I take history, very commonly mothers tell me, उसके पापा भी ऐसे ही थे, वो छोटे थे ना तभी ऐसे ही मस्ती करते थे, अभी ठीक हो गए. So the grandparents also give us the same complaint that my son was also like that. So once he grew up, he's fine now. So, and it's, the research has shown that it's 74% of genetic contribution in ADHD diagnosis. So basically, I am again stressing on this hereditary part, because when you suspect a ADHD child, you should dig into the history, the family history. You will get some uncle or mother or father who would have had similar symptoms in their childhood also. It runs in the family. So it's a very, very common complaint. वो भी ऐसे ही थे, वो भी बहुत मस्ती करते थे. You know, so that's a very important point. It runs in family. Now the medical causes. For those who do not know what is prenatal and natal, prenatal is the period of pregnancy of a mother, and natal is the period of childbirth. So when prenatal causes, like if a mother is an alcoholic, smoker, due to any reason, in India, these chances are little less, but otherwise, you know, prenatal causes can be mother having bed rest due to any complication or whatever. So all these things may lead to any complication during pregnancy to the mother, can lead to ADHD. And the natal causes, that are the child, that the difficulty during childbirth. The child can be prematurely born, the child can be low birth weight, the child did not cry immediately after birth. So if a child does not cry, the oxygen does not reach the brain as fast as it should be. So it's very important. You must have seen in Hindi movies, the child is literally hung upside down and patted on the buttocks to make him cry, because that's very important. Because if the child does not cry, that's the first breath of the child where the oxygen reaches the brain. And if there is hypoxia, that is lack of oxygen, he might turn into ADHD. Basically, all of these symptoms are the probable causes. These kids are called high risk infants. They may or may not turn into ADHD. It's not that definitely a low birth weight baby or a premature baby will go into ADHD, but these are the probability. They are called high risk infants. Now we go on to the environmental factors. So there are a lot of toxins in our blood. Like lead is one of the major toxin, because of which they say, the research, again, there is no solid proof or nothing is proved here, but they feel, the researchers feel that ADHD is due to the lead, presence of lead, and poor nutrition. Nutrition and ADHD has a very strong relation. Basically, all these preservatives, all these food dyes, what we eat, and all the sugar content in your food, all these things are going to give brain a kick, and the child is going to become more hyperactive. So whenever ADHD child comes to us, we always tell mothers to cut down on the sugar content and use jaggery instead of sugar wherever it's possible. I mean, sugar is going to definitely make, the glucose is going to make your brain more hyper. So till now, we have covered the causes, types, definition, and the brain pathology. I hope you all are in sync with me, because I feel as if I'm giving lecture to a wall right now, Dawood. I mean, I do not know who has entered, who has not entered, and what is happening inside. I am just talking to my screen.
No, all going good, all going good. Yeah, it's going perfect. Yeah.
So is it going heavy?
Insightful.
Sorry?
We all are hearing, and it's really insightful.
Okay.
Please,
good.
you can carry on.
So I'll continue. I'll continue further. So I hope now we go into the next slide. So yes, now we all come to the main symptoms of ADHD. So what happens in ADHD? You look for, everybody knows low concentration, attention span, energy levels are very high, and the child cannot sit at one place. Very, very commonly seen symptoms. Everybody, whoever are working with children will immediately relate to these symptoms. So when I say symptoms, I would look for these three things. So the first thing is low concentration and attention span. So in that, I mean, how do you check the concentration level of a child who is not even still going to school? Forget 3 years. I mean, 4 years, they are in junior KG. So forget 4 and 3 years. I am talking about a 2-year-old child where he is not even started attending school. How would you check his concentration level? He'll keep on changing toys. He will not be able to sit with one toy particularly. He will play with this, then again he'll go there, and he will not, stick to one toy. Same thing, a little older child will not stick to one activity per se. He will do coloring, half coloring chhod diya, then he'll go to some other toy. He will walk around in the room and then do something else. So none of the things, none of the activities are completed. Okay. So now, and they also have difficulty in following instructions. It's a big time problem with them. So whenever you're talking to them, you feel that he's not even listening to you, and you call them for dinners 10 times and he will not come for dinner. He is still busy doing his work. You feel as if he is giving you a deaf ear, but it is like the instructions or your voice is actually not getting registered in his brain. And other things are like, when in the classroom, when you tell them, okay, the worksheet is like, color all the alternate circles, and he will color in all the circles, because the child has heard about the coloring part. He has not heard about or registered the alternate part of it. And mind well, this child does not have any issues in grasping or concept development. He understands the concept of alternate circle, but he has not registered the information of coloring the alternate circle. Then we have something like in a house, if I tell, Bacha, please switch on that light and just get 2 spoons from the kitchen. He will do either of the things. Either he'll get the spoons or he'll switch off. So 2-3 instructions is a problem for them. Now I would say they have extremely poor sitting tolerance. Now I want to wake up my participants. So I want all of you to tell me, in a toddler, what sitting tolerance do I expect? Which activity do I expect them to have a sitting tolerance? If you all can give your answers in the chat.
Yeah, Daud, you can open the chat box. We can see.
When do you expect a child to sit when he is a small or a toddler? I would not expect any child to sit for a longer time for any activity. So hai nahi.
While eating, while feeding.
Okay. That's
playing with the clay.
Yes.
Story time. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So while eating, while playing, feeding, story time, eating.
Perfect.
Flight.
Perfect.
So mostly the answers are coming as eating, playing, and during a certain activity time.
Okay. So we mute everyone again. Can we mute all the participants? Yeah.
Yes, we've done that. We've done that.
So you all are right. When, especially a toddler, I'm not talking about a child going to school also. Right now, we are in toddlers zone. So when a toddler, especially, I would expect a toddler to at least sit at one place and have food. But I've seen so many mothers running around the whole house to feed the child. So he is expected to sit at that time. So I would definitely see, I've seen many mothers making them sit on the high chair with a lap board around, so that the child does not cannot get up, doesn't, in the sense he does not have a choice, cannot get up during that feeding time, and he is absolutely confined to that particular area. So that's a good thing which a mother can accept or maybe implement. Second time, when is when you are reading out a story to a child, at least he will sit for some time to see what are the pictures, what is it going about. And story time is something with pictures which they really love to do. But ADHD child will not be able to sit for story time or change it. Sorry?
1 minute, Daud. 1 minute.
Yeah.
1 minute, Rima. Let
Yeah.
me check with Daud.
वो यही वाला है.
Daud, if you can. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah.
Rima, carry on.
So basically, sitting tolerance is needed at that time. And of course, you all know, in a school setup or when the child starts going to the school, you need him to sit in the class with others. You cannot just move around in the class. But I have seen my junior KG kid actually, jumping on the teacher's table and jumping down on the floor and going out of the classroom. And she was found from the 4th floor of the school. So it was very, very lot of energy in the child, and they cannot sit at one place. So sitting tolerance is one big thing. And during assessments, if you ask me, I have actually logged my rooms of the assessment, because the child wants to go in and out n number of times, and I cannot. It's so disturbing. So I have to actually log the rooms, and then I have done the assessments of the child. That's very obvious hyperactivity, which they have no sitting tolerance. The next is, okay, if जबरदस्ती बिठा भी दिया child को, okay, the parents have said, doctor aunty को मिलना है, behave well, don't move around, and the child is sitting, and when he sits at that time, he is extremely fidgety. Even though जबरदस्ती बिठाया है, he will not sit still. He will be extremely fidgety. He will be fidgeting with the eraser or whatever things are there on the table, and he will take a pen and do tick 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 all the time. He will be moving his legs all the time, shaking his legs all the time. They just cannot sit still, even though they are made to sit compulsorily. Mental preparation karke aate hain parents, but I can see that restlessness in them when they are really struggling to sit at one place. They run excessively, they talk excessively, oh god, they interrupt. Very major complaint by a mother again. Whenever I'm on the phone, doctor, she always interrupts me. He always has a question when I'm talking on the phone. He just cannot wait till the time I hang up my phone. So this is all impulsiveness of the child. Excessive talking, don't underestimate excessive talking in a child. People, I'm telling you, lot of girls of type 1, which we already discussed, like type 1 inattentive type, have lot of issues when they talk a lot. They tell us 10 minutes ka talking kiya, and you get only 2 minutes ka information from them. They run around the bush. Ye hua, wo hua, flight of ideas. In the thoughts also, there is no stability, no sequencing. They will run from one topic and jump over to another topic. So they have lot of talking. So don't underestimate, excessive talking is also a part of ADHD, especially seen in girls and type 1 inattentive type of ADHD. Now we have sleep disturbances. As I already told you, sleep is a very, very important symptom. So they have a lot of disturbed sleep. they have bedwetting, they have lot of movements during, वो बोलते हैं, like parents tell us, बहुत हिलता है सोने के time, he does not sleep, शांति से सोता नहीं है. So that is like, you know, a lot of disturbed sleep. They will talk in the sleep a lot, they will walk in the sleep sometimes, and sleep is also a big time problem. You know, these toddlers, or when they have naps in the afternoons, 2 hours ka nap lete hain. Forget ADHD child, normal child also, when they go to sleep, mothers are so happy. They are like, harsh, 2 ghanta so gaya, abhi shanti. But ADHD child will wake up in 15 minutes. He will have very short naps. He will not sleep for a longer time. So that's a very big time problem. For parents are like, we are tired in the night. We don't, you know, we do not want to stay awake, but the child is not tired. So basically the emotional center or the arousal center, because of neurotransmitters which was affected, it takes time for the brain to go from that waking state to the sleeping state, and from sleeping to waking state. So it's a change of state of your mind, which becomes a problem for the brain. That is why a lot of sleep disturbances are seen in ADHD. See, if you go all these features, if you see the symptoms, what I'm saying, you will get all these symptoms in the net. But here in the webinar, you'll be able to understand why are these symptoms present. Okay. So now this emotional dysregulation is a very huge topic. I mean, I can talk on hours on this. But what I'll do is, I will, in the next slide, I'll be explaining you in details what is emotional dysregulation. What happens is, the first two symptoms what we have seen is very commonly seen by all the you know, professionals, and everybody knows about them. But the emotional dysregulation part is overlooked by most of the kids, most of the professionals, and sometimes even doctors do not know about it. The developmental pediatrician.
Please go ahead, ma'am. I'll take care of it. Ma'am, you're muted. Rima, ma'am, you're muted, please. Sorry. And can we just, ma'am, just
Yeah,
unmute.
now everyone can hear.
Yeah. Yes. I've no, sorry for the disturbance with some parents. Ma'am, also one request, we could just, if there are some questions, I'll take a couple of questions now, or else you would like to collect all the questions and just wanted to announce of two or three workshops that are happening. So can I just take the 2 minutes to announce, and then they can also
know the questions we can take it in the end,
okay.
But the workshops you can announce after this, because emotional dysregulation is a heavy topic again. So
okay.
we can have a break at that.
All right. Now or whenever you tell me. Now is okay?
So I don't know how much has people heard me. Where was I and when did I get muted?
Okay,
so
no. Just a minute ago, you're already there. Right, Chandalata ma'am.
Yeah, you were at emotional dysregulation.
Okay, so I'll just wind up and tell you that we are going to do the emotional dysregulation in details in the next slide itself. And basically this is overlooked by most of the people and sometimes by professionals too. That's what I told about emotional dysregulation. Okay, I will go into the details after the video presentation.
Yeah, I will take care. I just request all the participants to put the mics off. Unfortunately, you know, if I will do that, otherwise we'll have to put them in the waiting room then. So thank you so much, everybody else. And so Dr. Rima, shall I go ahead and just share the upcoming workshops?
Yeah, sure. I stop my share then?
No, I'll take care of it. Don't worry. So there you are. You can see the, right. So thank you everybody for your patient listening. I'm learning so much about my brain I never learned in the last 40 years. So thank you, Dr. Rima. Right. I think I'm sure all of us are just excited for a longer series because I see a lot of questions, parents asking it. So here is one where Dr. Rima is one of the speakers. Dr. Chandalata is a speaker. Poonam Agarwal, you heard her in some of the webinars before. So all of them are experts in the field. And there's an intensive intervention for ADHD. That's an entire program that we're doing, a series of 8 workshops that we're doing. The numbers are there. The posters will be shared with you. And now since you know, most of us, you've registered here, you will get the details of it. Ask us for the detail. And this is what we'll be doing by the end of August and early September. It's a series of 8 workshops that you're going to do. So here you have all the 3 speakers. There's also a nutritional practitioner who will be, a nutritionist who will be joining in. And anything you want to know about the workshop, the 2 speakers already here, you can speak to them, you can ask them, you can put on the chat. So this is a workshop that we'll be doing, a series, rather a course that we'll be doing for that. And you will get a certificate for attending this course from Aakar Child Development Center. So that's the announcement I had. There are two other announcements besides this. One of them revolves around the organizers here. In education, it's a generic program. Today, the pandemic has shown that schools can be closed, but learning is not stopped. So there is an entire online schooling called Hub Schooling. That's called the Hub School, or the school on the cloud, which already have started 2 sessions. One, the morning session called the Golden Sparrow, which is more also of a physical class that is after the pandemic. But then there's an evening session, which is immediately after the it is an evening session. It's like an alternate to sending your children for life skills tuition. There's English literature or language class. You can ask about it. Again, the poster and the details are here. I'll put them in the chat also. So this is a professional program which involves math, science, English, and business studies. So since you're mentioning of the fees, the course fee for the earlier one, if I were to correct Dr. Chandrlata, we will, there is transparency is what we always believe. It is close to 2,800 rupees for the entire 8 workshop course. And there is a early bird fee also, which we'll be mentioning that to you. Number 2 is this fee is 2,000 rupees per month, or 5,000 for next 3 months. That's a program for the Hub Schooling. And the final announcement is there is a workshop that we're doing with Colonel and a couple of brigaders who will be coming and addressing the students on 15th August. Remember, all the time we used to go to school and Jhanda chadane ke liye, but this is a fun-filled workshop, more like Rang De Basanti. I'll be hosting it. It's a completely free workshop. I'll put the link here. Please join. It's fun. We'll have a lot of humor, a lot of stories, a lot of anecdotes and quizzes. It's a free workshop, hopefully with Aakar and Sky Education that we'll be doing. So thank you so much for your patient hearing. These are the 4 workshops. I'll repeat. This is the most important one. This is related to your field. The entire course of 8 sessions that we're going to do. I'll give the details and the links in the chat. Over to you, Dr. Reema. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. I will share the screen again. I had stopped actually.
Okay.
One sec. I'll be just there.
Meanwhile, I will share the links in the chat for the courses.
Okay. So we were at emotional dysregulation. So let us find more about it. So guys, to know about emotional dysregulation, we all should know first what is self-regulation. Okay. Listen to me very carefully. This is the crux of the lecture, and it's very important and very interesting. We all have emotions, right? We have emotions of anger, we have emotions of fear, anxiety, pleasure, happiness, whatever. We have basic emotions with us. Now we have learned a particular behavior to tackle these emotions, okay? And this learning of behavior of tackling these emotions has started during very early childhood of our lives. Now, I'll give you an example. Suppose, just imagine that I'm angry with somebody, okay? Listen to me very carefully. I'm angry with someone. The emotion here is anger with me. So I have certain options with me. I might either go and react. I have to react to my anger, right? I just cannot keep my anger with me. So the reaction can be of various types. I can go and slap that person if I'm really angry with him. I can actually argue and back answer with that person and pick up a fight with him, or I can maybe just give him a deaf ear and he keeps on blabbering and I do not react at all. And the fourth one, maybe I can just walk away from there because I do not want to get into any of the shit in this. So what happens is I have to think, and I will think about my whole situation. And imagine I have thought to go and walk away, and I go inside my room. So what do I go inside my room and what do I do? I feel still very uncomfortable because I have walked away from the situation, but my emotion is still there inside me. My anger has not gone. My anger has not stopped still. So what do I do to feel more comfortable? I am going to either immediately call up my friend and then just tell her this happened and this is what I am feeling. Or I will do kind of a meditation or a yoga, or I would, do some vigorous physical activity to get out of that emotion. Or I will cry it out, or I will write it out, or I will vent out in some or the other way. and then I feel little relaxed. After doing either of these, what did I do after going inside the room? I self-regulated myself. That self-regulation is very important. Otherwise, the emotions keep on coming in us. And if you can't regulate or handle your emotions, you are always in a very unstable mood. You're not feeling comfortable from within. So this self-regulation, I self-regulated myself, and because of this self-regulation, I came back to my normal mood, which I was before the anger had set in. This emotion can be of pleasure also. It's not only about anger and bad emotions. I mean, pleasure also can be an emotion. So if I'm very happy, I've got good news, I'm so happy, I'm calling up people and sharing my happiness. I am, in a very elated mood. I'm talking to everyone. I feel like dancing. I'm in an elated and I'm on the top of the world. But after some time, I will get back to my normal state. I will not keep on dancing and talking all the time. After a certain period, I'll come back to my normal mood. What did I do? I self-regulated myself and I came back. So this is called self-regulation, which is not there in ADHD children. They just cannot handle their emotions. They cannot handle any kind of emotion like anger or fear or anxiety. They will immediately react to it. How I thought in the first sequence, what should I do? I had an option of slapping that person. I had an option of picking up a fight, but I did not, because I thought of the consequences. I thought, I respected the authority. Maybe that person is an elder to my age. So I respected that authority. So that thinking of the consequence is not there in a ADHD child. They will just react to what they feel. They will jump from a height and they would not know that they would injure themselves. They might injure the person on whom they are falling. So that kind of self-regulation, that kind of thinking about the consequences is affected when your self-regulation is affected. And believe me, this kind of self-regulation, although it is an ongoing process throughout the life, you are continuously struggling to handle your emotions and self-regulating yourself and making your own self comfortable. But it develops. The development of this self-regulation happens in the peak period is between 3 to 5 years of age. That's the best age of pre-primary school. So now you all know, if there are teachers in this group, now you all know how important you all are for the child whom you're teaching the pre-primary period between 3 to 5 years of age. You are laying the foundation of their personality at this age. So it's extremely important that the child is self-regulated. Remember one thing in life: if you can't handle your emotions, you will not be able to open your brain to learn new things. So the focus will not happen. You are continuously struggling to handle your emotion, and you're working hard to make yourself comfortable in that. You are not able to focus on what the teacher is saying. You're not able to focus on the new learning which has to come in you. So that is why the focus is a problem. You cannot come back or bounce back to the normal state of mind. Therefore, the crying, the screaming, the tantrums, they go on and for a longer period, which is not expected in a normal child. A normal child can also cry. A normal child can also throw a tantrum. A normal child will also, become cranky. But the difference is the normal child will come back to normal mood or bounce back to its normal state of mind, and the ADHD child will linger on and on with that same matter and will stretch it like a chewing gum, I would say. He will take time to get back to the normalcy. So that is called emotional dysregulation. They are very highly dysregulated. So they have a lot of issues in their social relations. Their impulsive nature becomes, they will pick up a fight immediately. All the mothers are like, with same complaints. ये कभी भी नीचे जाता ना फ्रेंड्स के साथ झगड़ा करता है. He can never mix with anybody. He likes cycling a lot because उसमें there is not a group play, because he loves cycle में किसी के साथ, he doesn't have to interact, he doesn't have to talk. Group games are a problem for them. They get instigated very easily. थोड़ा tease किया and then they are like, oh, they flare up. So all these things are because they have not learned the way of regulation. So when I see a dysregulated child, I would see these symptoms in him. This
I
can be a,
also see one thing. I also see that they are the bully. They bully children. Huh? In this
yes.
young, yeah, they bully children. And ADHD bullies others.
You know what I have heard? I have a very, very common in my 20 years. Most 80% of the parents have told me that my child does not get along with a child of his own age. He is either pally with the elders who are pampering him, or he is pally with the children who are younger to him, because they can bully them. You know, they at that same age mein kabhi bhi unka nahi padta. He never spends time with children of his own age. And if they try to bully, and if the samne wala person does not get bullied, he immediately loses his temper, because regulation to hai hi nahi, and then he'll pick up a fight. And then always the interpersonal, and when they grow up also, in adults also, we have seen that interpersonal relationship is a big time problem. Okay, so these are the things. Generally we have just, he screams and cries a lot. So when I say these symptoms, these are for a longer period, as I already mentioned to you all. They throw things, frequent tantrums, ekdam cranky baby. You know, sometimes you see a baby and you say, oh, he's such a cheerful child, kitna happy child hai. Only he will cry only when he's hungry and sleepy. But sometimes these like in ADHD who are not very much regulated, they keep on crying for small matters. We call them rotudu hai, ek number ka rotudu child hai, when they come to us. You know, so this is what happens. They cannot bounce back. Their problem is cannot bounce back to normal state of mind easily. Number 6th symptom is the main reason for this. As I told you all, you get the symptoms in net, but you will not know why are these symptoms happening. Okay, so now can we, is this thing very much clear in your mind? There is one very beautiful experiment or the study done of marshmallow test. Most of the professionals must be knowing it. Where the children of this kindergarten were given marshmallow. The whole class was given these chocolates, marshmallow, whom of course they love it. So they were told that you can eat this marshmallow, one marshmallow if you want to, or if you wait for 15 minutes, you will get 7 more marshmallows. So then they were given a choice, either eat one right away or eat 7 after 15 minutes. The choice is yours. So the study showed that the 30% of the kids opted for eating marshmallow after 15 minutes. So those kids who waited, who had a good impulse control, who had that self-control and willpower, they were studied throughout. The studies, they were kept under observation, and it was seen that they easily passed their entrances. They had very good interpersonal relationships. The anxiety and the fear levels were much lesser in them than the others. And finally, they had a lot of success. They were more successful than the other group. So this marshmallow was a very, very important study which was done. And believe me, it was done in the kindergarten, because as I said, the peak period of self-regulation is in the kindergarten. That's the basic, that's the foundation of your personality. If anything goes wrong there, then there are high chances that the personality can get affected in future.
Right. Ma'am, we almost close to an hour. Can we take some questions?
Okay.
Would that be okay? You can, you can go ahead. Just I'll inform you.
Okay, we can take questions. No issues.
Okay. So I think this is your marshmallow, everybody. What ma'am is referring to, about instant gratification, something amazing that Walter Mischel has done. I'm a great fan of Walter Mischel, who did this test in Stanford. And we leave you with a marshmallow. There's a course coming up. So I got a lot of private questions here. So ma'am, could you just share a little bit about the course that is happening probably by the end of this month? The eight workshop series. Dr. Chandralata and Rima. Hold on, I'll just, can I unshare the screen so they can see both of you, ma'am? Can you undo the screen share, ma'am?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, ma'am, please.
So this 8-part series in which Dr. Rima is one of the featured lecturers for this. It's more about understanding, like today we are going to talk a lot about the diagnosis part. How do we diagnose the child? However, the intervention is the most essential part after diagnosis. And most of us that I come across, or the groups that I'm attached to, there's a lot of questions among parents, okay, we've been diagnosed. Most of them know we've been diagnosed. But what to do after that? How do we go about? So what are are the simple structured exercises that we can carry forward with the brain, which will also be presented by Dr. Reema. Then we'll be having a positive parenting session wherein they would be talking about the entire how to, how to reinforce the positive behavior and how to, how to handle the negative behavior. Sleep and routine is, I suppose, the most difficult part any parent is facing. So we will be having a complete session by another doctor about the sleep and the routines. A part shall be taken by Dr. Reema, and sleep will be mostly taken up by another pediatric doctor, so that we can talk in length about how to work on their sleep and on their routine. Another most important part is about the nutrition. Most the recently when I attended the international conference, they spoke a lot about supplements in terms of omega-3. They spoke about fish oil. They spoke about other supplementary diets, a protein diet, which even Dr. Reema said that there has to be they should be on a low sugar diet. So what kind of a diet should we give a special needs children? So that is what we'll be talking to on our nutritionist panel. She'll be talking to us about it. The latter part wherein cognition, executive functions, making friends, and how to handle these emotions, which ma'am is talking to us in detail about. We will be discussing this in detail. We'll be talking to all the parents, all the professionals in detail about these subjects, so that we understand what. See, when it comes to reading, you may understand, as Dr. Reema also suggested, that you may understand the symptoms, but where the symptoms are originating from, where the symptoms are coming from, and how do I handle these symptoms. These are the major things that we will be looking into in our workshop. These workshops are very innovative, very substantial, and we've kept a very reasonable rates for all the parents and professionals to get in touch and learn a lot. So this is once you learn this whole thing, we have a better understanding about ADHD. We understand the parents. We know what to speak to the parents about positive parenting. We know about what to tell the parents about diet. So for professionals also, it is equally important to understand, what do I tell this parent, what do I inform this parent, what kind of a diet the child should have. Okay, the doctor has given me these supplements. Are these supplements important? What is the implication? Most of the times ADHD child is on medication because of their hyperactivity. So we are going to talk about medication, supplements, nutrition, everything on our balance, so that parents and professionals can get a better view as to what is needed. That's it.
Okay. Right. Thank you so much, ma'am. I think we would start these sessions, and yes, there is a certification for the workshop that been recommended here. Any questions for Dr. Reema? Any questions, Dr. Chandra? Please go ahead. We have a couple of minutes to take a few questions. Okay, there is a question from Jasmine Anthony, which says, will the dysregularity in emotions lead to, or rather the question, Dr. Reema, is what will it lead to, dysregularity in emotions? Mr. Jasmine is here. Is that, hopefully I'm putting your questions right, sir?
So basically when the child, the dysregularity in the emotions is, see, we are going to have these emotions throughout our lives. So throughout we have to handle them, and basically, what do you say? You can, it's going to be coming to you all the time. So if you're not regulated, so if you're asking leads to in a child, he will not know, he will be very impulsive, he will lose his temper anytime, he can hit anybody, he will have spoiled relationships everywhere, and he will be a loner, withdrawn kind of and if you're talking about an adult will have their interpersonal relationship issues. He will have a lot of issues with his colleagues, with his family members, and he will always feel disorganized because they are very disorganized.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'll mute it.
Yes, so basically the thing is, depending on the age, the dysregularity of the emotions are going to definitely hamper your progress and your overall personal life.
Okay, thank you. How will ADHD associated learning disability is a question from Damanpreet Kaur, ma'am.
Yes. So ADHD, we will, now the next slide I was going to talk about was about sensory integration and the learning part of the child. So one of the major symptom of ADHD is the child cannot focus and concentrate. So that leads to learning difficulty.
Ma'am, based on the request from a lot of participants, you want to continue? We'll take up another 20 minutes of the session if you wish to. And Dr. Chandalata,
yeah, I think I can finish in 15 minutes now. I'm almost like
okay.
2-3 slides more and we are done.
So please go ahead, ma'am. Please go ahead. I think.
Okay. Wait.
Dr. Chandalata, you are the host now. I will.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Daud. Thank you for your input. Thank you. Thank you so much, Daud.
Okay. So shall I go ahead with my next slide?
Yeah. Rima, carry on.
Okay. I don't know why it's not going. One sec. It's not going ahead. Wait. I will do the sharing again. Wait. Why is it not going ahead? Wait.
Rima?
Yeah, one sec. Just give me a minute.
Yeah, that's okay, Rima. Take your time. No problem. We are all with you.
Technology can, really hamper you. So share screen. Over here. ADHD. Presentation. Yeah. So we are in the next slide now, which is now talking about the sensory systems and ADHD. Okay, sensory integration is a vast topic again. I mean, it's very huge and I can take 3 days workshop on that. But here I have tried to relate it to ADHD only. So now basically to understand the impacts on ADHD about sensory integration, we need to know that we have all the sensory systems which are constantly giving inputs in our brain. Like as in auditory is our hearing sense, visual is the sense of vision, tactile is our sense of touch, proprioceptive and vestibular are the two sensations which are internal sensations of our body, which constantly keep on telling our brain about our position in space. In the sense, right now I'm looking at the screen, right? But I still know that my right leg is crossed over my left leg. How do I know that? Because the joint receptors of my knee joint, the joint receptors in my hip joint are giving a message to the brain about my position of body in space. So continuously the feedback is going inside the brain at your subconscious level that this part of my body has moved, my head has moved, my neck has moved, whatever. But it's at subconscious level. It doesn't mean that if I'm hearing something, I'm not seeing something. If I'm seeing, I am not feeling the touch of my own body. The cloths are touching my body, the hair is touching my skin. So it doesn't mean that only auditory goes, visual doesn't go. All the sensory systems, all the 5 senses are going to go simultaneously inside the brain, and the brain is going to take only that information which is necessary. The brain is going to ignore the other part of the information. Right now, my brain does not need to think where is my hair, what is touching my body, what is the sound coming outside. Right now, you all are listening to me, but you all are ignoring the sounds of your house or the pressure cooker or the traffic on the road or the honking on the road. You are able to ignore that information and take only the information which you want. So that part of ignoring the unwanted information is done by the brain, and that is called the processing, sensory processing by brain, which is known as sensory integration. So when this processing of the brain is good enough, you get good amount of gross motor functions, fine motor functions, visual motor functions, and you can have a proper age related or age appropriate development in a child. What do you mean by gross motor? Balance, bilateral integration, running, hopping, jumping, skipping, all these are gross motor functions of a child. What do you mean by fine motor? Like holding a pencil, eating with a spoon, writing, buttoning, unbuttoning, zipping. All these are fine motor, where the fine muscles of your hands and the fingers are related to do an activity. Visual motor are like drawing, copying, you are actually doing those patterns where eye and hand are coordinated together. So if the sensory processing of your brain is good, if the brain is able to ignore the unwanted information, then your gross motor, fine motor and visual motor will be better and will be age appropriate. But if it is not, then you get these difficulty in gross motor. The balance is not good in the child. The child may be struggling to hold the pencil while writing or coloring. The child will not be able to copy circles, shapes and all from the board or from the worksheets. So and these things are called soft neurological signs, which are present in ADHD because the sensory processing is affected at the brain area. And the filtering of information, what I told you all, we need to ignore the unwanted information. So that filtering of information is absent in an ADHD child. So then the child cannot focus. The child is doing homework with mama and the doorbell rings. Kaun aaya? Somebody calls her, Mommy, kiska phone hai? What is happening? So all the stimuli around are responded by the brain, which you need not, you have to ignore. So that filtering is not there. That is why the sensory processing is affected, and that's why the child cannot focus. And then, so when a child comes to me, I will not only see the hyperactivity and the low attention and the sitting tolerance and only the emotional dysregulation part. When an ADHD child comes to me as an occupational therapist, I will go into the sensory processing in details. I would look for these soft neurological signs. I would look whether the child's balance is good or not. I would also see whether the grip of the pencil is correct or he has a faulty grip. Age appropriate hai ya nahi hai? But it has to be age appropriate, of course. For that, you should know the normal development of the child to appreciate the abnormal thing. If you expect a 1.5-year or 2-year-old child to jump, he cannot jump because jumping comes at around 2.5 years. So then you cannot blame the child and say that the gross motor is affected. So you should know first the normal development, and then you can appreciate the abnormal development or the inappropriate age appropriate developments of the child. Okay, so I go on the next slide. I have just listed these things which, you can go through this, and if you have any doubts, we can go, but we have already discussed in details because these things are already available on net. So I would just rush through these slides, but otherwise it's a very, very self-explanatory slide. I need not, actually go into the details because we have done in details. As I told you, you will know the reasons behind it now. Can I change the slide? Are you all okay with this?
Rima, just run through it. I think just run through it. You can just take 2 minutes to run through this.
Okay, so basically in a toddler, when they are not going to school, what exactly you will see? The main point is inability to sit even while eating and reading to them. We already discussed that. And sleep disturbances. These are the main things. And he will definitely be a cranky baby, crying baby, screaming baby. But you have to keep in mind that it is going to go on for a longer period than normal. Okay, so just keep that in mind, and then you will be able to figure out. They will run around, climb on, jump on. They will not be able to sit with one particular toy. They'll be keeping on changing toys. When you see in a 3 to 5-year-old, you will see that the energy levels are so high that looking at them, you feel tired. Oh, sorry. You looking at them, you feel tired. Kitna energy hai isme, and he has trouble listening to a lot of instructions. If 2-3 instructions are given at a time, he cannot focus. He's overly bold. He does not know like how much. I've seen certain kids, being very familiar and very very pally with the strangers also. They really don't care. They are overly bold. They don't care of the consequences. They are highly disorganized, as we already saw. सब pages teared होते हैं, torn होते हैं, and everything is folded. Every day mother says that careless mistakes, careless spelling errors. Mother says that ये हमेशा उसका pencil, he loses his pencil and comes. See, as a child, remember, the child might lose things. It is not wrong. But if it happens almost every day, then it is an alarming sign. Then you have to see the frequency of that happening. So then all these constantly interrupting. He cannot wait in a queue, in a line. He has to, because the space or the speed of the line which is moving is not in his control. He cannot stay in the line, within the line. He's so impulsive that he would want to push somebody or run from the line, or in circle time, he will not sit. So these things are generally seen in a ADHD child. These are the symptoms which are highlighted. And as we saw that difficulty in gripping a pencil, copying shapes, overly bold behavior. So all these things, balance and hopping is also affected. A 4-year-old child comes to me, and if the child cannot hop, I would definitely think of gross motor, difficulty in gross motor functions. If a child, mama says he cannot, zip up his pants, or he cannot do buttoning, unbuttoning at 5 years of age, I would definitely think of a ADHD symptom of fine motor functions. So depending on the age, you should be able to appreciate what the child can do and what the child cannot. Now we have seen a lot of signs and symptoms. We saw about emotional, we saw about gross motor, fine motor, everything. We saw about all these low concentration, everything. But still I cannot label the child as ADHD till the time if these 3 criteria are not fulfilled. First is the functional performance. As I said, in spite of having all these signs, the child can be just hyperactive, but finishing his work, he is organized, he is able to have good relationships with his age group kids. Then if he is good, age appropriate development hai and hyperactive hai, I will not go for ADHD. The functions have to be impaired. He has to have incomplete work, he has to not finish his activity, and then only I can think of ADHD. The time frame is also equally important. It's like minimum 6 months. If you go to a psychologist, here I think we have a lot of counselors and psychologists, minimum DSM-5 classification says that the symptoms should last minimum for 6 months or more. अभी किया है, पहले तो अच्छा था, खाली 2 महीने से थोड़ा hyper है, then I cannot term him as ADHD. Minimum 6 months the symptoms should last, and minimum 2 settings. What do you mean by 2 settings? See, if a parent comes and tells me, doctor, he is good at home, but in school उसको पता नहीं क्या होता है, मेरे साथ अच्छे से पढ़ता है, but in school he is very hyper, then I would not term. At least minimum 2 settings. If he is hyper in school, he has to be hyper at home, he has to be hyper at community, in the community setting also, like restaurants, like going to the parks, going to the malls, everywhere he will be hyper. It's not that ek jagah pe hyper and the other setting he is not hyper. So minimum 2 or more settings he has to show these signs and symptoms, then only you can diagnose him as a ADHD. So it's like, I've seen many parents, again, a very, very common complaint. Restaurant, we can't go. We have not gone to the restaurant for 2 years. Doctor, can you believe it? Because he just does not sit, and it's so embarrassing for us. So because the ADHD child will be ADHD in a restaurant setting, he will be ADHD at home, he will be also ADHD in school also. It's not that only at one place. So when I say hyperactivity, it is just a symptom. That does not mean that every hyperactive kid is ADHD. So there are differential diagnoses to this. And there are many other conditions, psychological conditions, behavior disorders, and stuff like that, which are also going to have hyperactivity as their main symptom. So out of that, I have taken only a positional defiant disorder, which is the most similar and almost same like ADHD. So this we would say in details little bit. Otherwise, other things are also hyperactivity, but they do not show the other symptoms of ADHD. Only hyperactivity is seen in the other disorders. So now when I talk about oppositional defiant disorder, the main differences I have just tried to figure out here, that they are more difficult to manage. They are purposeful. Remember that an ADHD child will have some guilt in him. ADHD child will tell mama, मुझे नहीं करना था लेकिन हो गया. I didn't want to do it, but it just happened. So that guilt is there in ADHD child. But ODD, oppositional defiant disorder, will never have that guilt. They will do it all the more to annoy you, to harass you, to make it more irritating for you. So they are more difficult to actually handle them. I remember myself and Chanda were discussing 2 days back, and ODD child actually locked a teacher in the room, inside the room, because the teacher was saying something about his behavior, or I don't know what was the exact case. So they can go to that level. They will not respect
The child
authority.
used to go to toilet very often, so the teacher kept on telling him, don't go to the toilet, don't go to the toilet. So he
So
actually locked the teacher in the toilet.
so you lock the teacher in the toilet. So they will not
Yes.
respect authority. You know, they are very, very revengeful kinds, and they will not have any guilt of their behavior. So finally, if you feel that you have got ADHD, you can maybe refer to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and then occupational therapy assessment is done in details, and then the child is kept on the right track. So these are the few pointers which you should know, that what ADHD means. And then after knowing ADHD, what next? How can you help him? That Chandra has already told us about the upcoming projects of ours. So then we can go ahead with that. So this is what it is for the day.
We open the question forum to ask questions. If there are questions in the chat box, thank you, Rima. It was a wonderful session. We had lovely this. I would like to, you to. We had that emotional regulation. Kana, I lost you on the 6th point actually. Can you just
Okay.
tell me about it? I lost you there actually.
I can give you that slide again. We can do it there.
Yeah. Everybody is very happy. It was a wonderful session, Rima. A lot to know
Thank you
and
so
lot to
much.
learn. Yeah, we had a little disturbance about Daud had to leave. So
Okay.
he kind of winded up with things, but I would like to know a little about emotional dysregulation.
Yeah. So I've opened that slide. What exactly you wanted?
Yes. No, I will just see what is to. Yeah. Carry on.
So you want me to explain the slide?
Yes. No, just from the 6th point. Just from the 6th point.
So basically, the 6th point is the main crux of emotional dysregulation. So that is, we have the ability to bounce back to normal state of mind very easily. Even we go through these state of minds like fear and anxiety and anger and stuff like that. But we come back to a normalcy, which a emotionally dysregulated child will not be able to do that. So he will linger on and on in that same state of mind. He'll be fixated at that state. Basically, he cannot come out of that state of mind that easily. It will take a long time, and he will be very withdrawn and has trouble interacting with others, because he knows that he's not able to relate to others. He's not able to jingle or mingle with others. So they will prefer to remain aloof and withdrawn, and prefer doing activities which are not at a group level. And as we already discussed, aggressive behavior and cannot control impulses. So they would not think of any consequences. They always act before, like they will act without thinking only. So they will not think before acting, basically, I wanted to say. So they will not think before acting. So they will just do it. If they want to do it, they'll just do it. They will not see that this is at a height. I might fall. If I run so fast, I might get hurt. There is a table at the level of my forehead. I might bang into it. They will just not think before doing anything. And sleep disturbances are a big time problem, as we all know about it.
This recording of this session will be available on Aakaar Child Development website, so you all can download it from there. It's a free session, so the recordings shall be available. We have already recorded, so not to worry. Plus, we've also given you we are giving you a checklist, a short checklist made by us, and as in a takeaway. Parents who have attended and parents, teachers, therapists who have attended to today's session shall be getting that checklist for working up with the parents and other parties with their children. So that also is taken care of. Apart from that, the regular course which is coming up about the 8-part series, we shall be sharing the details from Sunday tomorrow onwards, and you can get back to us for that. Okay, Rima?
Okay, thank you, Chandralata, so much.
I think for the questions, yes. Yeah.
Tell me.
So we are getting good responses, and we have all the participants are pretty happy, so we can wind up for today. And anybody has any questions, they can also put forward in the group. I shall send it to Dr. Rima, and she will have a look at it.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
everyone, for participating.
Thank you, Dr. Reema. It was a wonderful session. Thank you. Good day.
Welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah. Chalo.